In this video, I will be scratch building a little 3/4 wattish do-it-yourself guitar amp based on the ssguitars.com Honey amp. In this two-part review and evaluation of the circuit, I will take you through my process of going from an initial concept to a completed project, developing each aspect of it as I go along. Part 1 is going to be about the actual building and development of it, and in Part 2, we will be looking at the waveforms and hearing what it sounds like. So here I have a thing called the Honey amp, which has been sent to me to build and evaluate, and came to me in this little priority mail box from the post office. I already opened that up a little bit, and so here we've got some little paper envelopes, which I think is cool. It's a little more environmentally friendly. I'm not sure what's in here. I think these are the 1/8" jacks. Got a little package of knobs. And the ohm symbol must mean those are resistors. And that is a schematic symbol for a capacitor. And this is probably like the 1/4" jacks and whatnot. Don't know what's in that. And then here we have what I'm assuming is going to be, okay, so looks like we have a parts list. Here is the kind of honey colored printed circuit board, nicely neatly laid out. And so here's our component list, some notes on the circuit, links to calculators for the capacitors and resistors, and then here is the schematic. Alright, so what do we have here? We have a input, we have an audio, 100K audio log pot, which is a gain control, which is basically just a volume control on the input. It goes through a coupling capacitor. We have MPSA 13 with some, looks like clipping diodes in there. MPSA 13 is a high gain transistor. And then that goes to a volume and tone control scheme, which is kind of like what I did in my Desert Strum amp, where I modified the runoff groove Little Gem Mark II with an interstage volume and tone control. This is implemented differently than how I did it. It's probably better. Mine's kind of a hack. And then it goes to an LM386 audio op amp, or audio amplifier. It's good for roughly 1/2 watt. And then we go out to the speaker, and kind of a cool little feature is we have a 1/8" headphone jack as well. So looks like an interesting little circuit. It'll be fun to build and test this. Very tiny little knobs. Here's our 1/8" jacks. One would be an auxiliary input, and the other one's a headphone jack. And this unmarked envelope would be, now looks like we have 3 potentiometers and our input jack. So I don't see really a speaker out jack, but you could definitely put that in your enclosure. Last but not least, we have this other little unmarked envelope. Oh, that's interesting. It's a little foil, wrapped all in foil here. And inside we have, looks like an LED, 5mm LED, and we have our 1N4148 diode, and then our MPSA 13, which I have a drawer full of these things, and then our LM386 and socket. So hopefully we don't have weird problems with these LM386s like I've had in the past. We'll find out. Now, this is really kind of a minor criticism, but I kind of like it when you have a component layout showing where the components are on the printed circuit board with like where a resistor is, it just like has the value or whatever, and then maybe the part number next to it. But I mean, this works just as well. It's just, I always find this to be a little more, I don't know, it's just more time consuming to have to go to here and go, okay, R1, R2 is a 1K, and then go over here, and which one of these is a 1K, and then I forgot what I'm doing, and I have to come back here. For people with ADD like me, you know, if you have a component layout and it just says 1K here, it's easier, but I mean, this works fine, it gets the job done. It's just, that's one of my personal preferences. One thing that, it's not a criticism of this kit necessarily, but one thing I find annoying about these PCBs oftentimes is that the holes for the resistors are so darn close together that you can't get the resistor to lay flat on the board without like having to tug really hard on the leads with a pair of pliers to get it to sit flat on the board. If you're anal about that sort of stuff, that kind of annoys you, and that just seems to be an issue with all these PCB design programs. They just put the pads a little too darn close together. I mean, if another millimeter further apart would just make it easier. But once again, it's not a criticism of this kit, it's just something that I find is common to all of these PCBs made by an outfit that manufactures them for you. Here I have all the resistors put onto the board now. As I was building the circuit, I saw that there's a little asterisk here. It says, for gain circuit, do not populate R0 and C0. So that would explain why they're absent in the kit. I guess, you know, if you want to build it for like with a clean buffer, you would supply those yourself, but it wasn't clear on the schematic. Like, I think they could have took a put an asterisk here by these two components to alert you to this note down here. Usually these notes I typically see like over here on the schematic, so I didn't even think to look over here. Not a big deal, I'll just lift one end of the two components that I soldered in. And so, I don't know, I guess probably about an hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half, taking my time. We now have the circuit all built, and that leads me to another thing which I'm kind of used to seeing from other do-it-yourself kit suppliers, is a drilling template. This didn't come with one, so I'm having to kind of create my own dimension drawing and figure out where the holes need to be for my enclosure and exactly how I'm going to lay out my enclosure, which is not up to the kit supplier, but a drilling template would be helpful because you know, I have to figure out where all these holes have to go. But you know, it's a fairly minor issue. The kit seems to be pretty nicely laid out and designed, and looking forward to putting it together and seeing what it sounds like. I'm thinking about ordering a 6-inch Alnico speaker and maybe doing like a cigar box type amplifier, and I'm still undecided on that, but so far so good. There, I think we got it figured out. So my initial idea for this amp was to do something kind of funny and something I haven't seen done before, which would be to use like a cereal box to slip a wood enclosure into. So I took a Lucky Charms box, one of the larger ones, and measured it, and I kind of did a quick sketch with pencil here just to have some concept of it, and then I decided to draw it in AutoCAD, and this is kind of what I ended up with. Kind of trying to figure out the form factor I want to have, and how I'm going to do the controls and stuff. So I decided I was going to do top and bottom plywood and like solid wood sides, and then we'd put a 6-inch speaker in there, and then I found a 6-inch Alnico speaker on eBay for relatively cheap, and decided I was going to use that. And so next, here I am figuring out where am I going to cut this piece of 1/4-inch birch plywood, and I use my compass here to figure out the dimensions for the hole I'm going to have to cut with the jigsaw. And then when I'm done, the speaker will be mounted from the back side with a grill cloth in front of it. So it'll be kind of inset a 1/4-inch from the the surface of this where the speaker is going to be. And I think I'm just going to cover it in Tolex, some black Tolex that I have left over from my Showman speaker cabinet resurrection video I did a few years ago. And I think I'm going to put some little chrome mini amp corners on the corners when it's done. I just have to figure out how I want to do the control interface now, where I'm going to put the actual circuit, how I'm going to do the mounting of the batteries, and where the input jack's going to be. But this is my general idea. And I've cut all my pieces of wood here. Here's going to be the front panel. It's going to sit this way. I'm going to have my controls in this little opening right here. And cut the side pieces. And what I'm going to do is have jacks, side-mounted jacks on the side here. And what I've done is made a bracket that will attach to the side here, and with 4 screws, and then the controls are going to be mounted here. And I like this method because it allows me to not have any screw holes in the front of the front panel there. And it's really sturdy aluminum. It's not going to go anywhere once that's screwed in. I thought that was kind of a pretty slick way to do the controls and jacks. And cut myself a piece of grill cloth. It's going to go behind here after I've Tolexed the cabinet. And this is the back piece, which is probably going to end up in 3 pieces because I need to create some sort of battery access panel. Probably just going to cut maybe the middle of it out and have like 2 screws or something where you pull that off and you get to the batteries. But so far it's coming together pretty well. I didn't use birch plywood for really any reason. It was just kind of what they had at Home Depot, and it's got a nice smooth surface, so it should look nice when the Tolex is applied. So here I've got the enclosure all nailed and fastened together. About ready to put the Tolex on it, and I decided to cut the back into 3 pieces, and it's going to look something like that. This will be my battery access panel, and I assume I'm going to probably have the batteries mounted maybe down here at the bottom. This is just very basic construction, wood glue and some little small nails, and it's all going to get covered with Tolex. So, and this will be plenty strong for a teeny little amp. So it's going to be a little tricky to Tolex this thing. I'm going to have to think about the way I'm going to go about this, because I'm going to have to do it in specific steps to make it all come together. Now I have the Tolex on the cabinet, and I think it turned out pretty well. I did this with one single piece of Tolex, and it was a challenge, but we managed to pull it off. And got the speaker installed. So the way I had to do this was put the front here on first, and then I had to cut the hole for the speaker, and then put the speaker cloth on, then put this shielding in place, which is just some little really thin sheet aluminum, and then put this bracket in place after I figured out exactly where these holes need to end up. And then I could apply this piece on the back and then finish covering it with the Tolex. So it was a bit of a challenge. Here is the back piece that's going to go on here, and it's going to be attached with a single screw here and 2 screws there. And so now the next thing I got to do is put the circuit in here. So I've made more progress on this. I've put the corners on the cabinet. I've got the electronics installed. I put labels on here labeling what all these controls are, and my jack's on the side. And I'm currently waiting for my handle to show up. But in the meantime, here's the electronics. That turned out pretty well. Now, one thing I decided to do, like I did on my Desert Strom amp, is I have an external speaker jack, and when you plug a 1/4-inch cable into here, it just simply breaks the connection to the internal speaker, sends it to the other speaker cabinet, and that's just done with a little switching jack. When you plug a cable into this, the tip disconnects the connection to the internal speaker, and it goes to the speaker cabinet. So I thought that was kind of a slick little thing. I like to do that sometimes, use my 2x12 cabinet with these little mini amps. And let's see what else. So I also have the back cover worked out, and the 3 screws, like I said earlier, will fasten on the back. And currently what I'm doing is figuring out the battery holder, and it's going to sit inside of here like this, and it's going to be fastened in there with 2 screws. I'm just trying to figure out how to secure it from the top, like a piece of Velcro or something. I'm not sure yet, but this is simply just a piece of angled aluminum that I have left over from a project I did and dismantled, and I cut out these middle portions here so I could kind of make a miter joint and make it into a square piece, and I glued in this little like 1/16 inch neoprene foam stuff like you get at the craft store, and I made it so it's kind of a snug fit, and we'll put that into the cabinet, and the batteries will sit there like that. So okay, so I found a solution for securely holding this battery holder in here, and it's just simply a repurposed desk lamp spring that will stretch over there like so, and attach this little hook that I've screwed into the cabinet, and that will keep that from going anywhere. And I think it'd actually be easier than doing Velcro, because I don't really have a lot of room in here. And while I'm here in the cabinet, right there in the middle of the screen is a screw that I drove in from the bottom just to prevent the front panel from being able to be pushed in. Just seemed like a good idea. So battery holder is installed now. I ended up having to rotate it 90 degrees because I was just a teeny bit short on my depth, but here you can see the spring holds the batteries in nicely, and it's not difficult to manipulate. It's not that strong, the spring, and It will keep the battery holder from falling out of here. It's very secure. So at this point, I'm basically done with the project. I have the handle on it now. I've installed some rubber feet on the bottom. This is what it looks like with the back on. At some point, maybe I'll add a DC jack on the back here. I already have it pre-wired to be able to do that. And I also added a little 1/2 inch round port on the front here. I've found in my personal experience with these little tiny cabinets, it just sounds a little better. It sounds a little more open with that small port in the front. And it just so happens that I can stick a 3/8 inch round plastic plug in here like you'd use to plug a hole. You go buy them at Lowe's or Home Depot. And anyways, you can stick that in there and you can have a true closed cabinet. But to my ears, it sounds better with the small ports. So the next thing we're going to do is just take a quick look at the waveforms and at the speaker and see how it clips and just what the waveform looks like. See what kind of distortion we're getting and so on.